Welcome everyone to Sensory Friendly Saturdays. My name is Rachel, my pronouns are she, her, and I'll be the host and moderator of today's event. I'm joined by Shelley from the Geneva Centre for Autism and Azadeh from Holland Bloorview Kids Rehabilitation Hospital, who will be speaking about how to manage anxiety and emotions using technology. We'll also hear about various local, regional, and virtual mental health resources, something that I'm personally really interested in, so we're looking forward to this session today. Thank you all for joining us. We're going to begin with a few Zoom housekeeping items. This webinar will have live captioning available. If you look at the bottom of your screen, you can select live transcript and show subtitle or view full transcript if you would like this feature on throughout the session. The chat will not be enabled today, but we can engage with one another through the Q&A button, which you'll see also at the bottom of your screen. Here you can ask us questions or answer questions we ask you. You'll have the opportunity to ask questions anonymously if you like. Throughout the session, we'll also have some poll questions that will pop up on your screen. You may be asked to raise or lower your virtual hand. This session will be recorded for those who aren't able to join us live today, and your cameras and microphones will be off and muted throughout the program. Any resources that we share will be linked in our chat, and all of those resources will be sent in a follow-up email along with a link to the recording after the event. So you don't have to worry too much about taking a lot of notes, and you can just listen, enjoy, and engage with us throughout the program. I acknowledge that I'm on the ancestral lands and territories of the Anishinaabe Nation, which includes the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Métis, and Inuit. The Ontario Science Centre and Geneva Centre for Autism are located in Toronto, which is governed by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit and the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant. As a settler, I am grateful to be able to live and work on this land alongside the Indigenous peoples who peaceably share this land and who have cared for it since time immemorial. I also want to acknowledge the recent National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, a day for learning and reflection about the intergenerational trauma of the residential school system. We stand in solidarity with the families and communities who grieve the loss of their loved ones and are still impacted by the horrific injustices and systemic racism today. Some of you may be joining from other locations today. We're encouraged to find out more about the peoples, treaties, and lands that we lived on. There are several resources available. Ones that I have found helpful are the websites whos.land or native-land.ca. So I encourage you to check those out and continue your learning journey. We further acknowledge the long-standing contributions to the development of Canada by the many peoples of African descent who are not settlers or whose ancestors were forcibly displaced since the arrival of the first named African, Mathieu de Costa, in 1604, and those who arrived previous and subsequent to. We are joined today by Shelley, the Director of Programs and Services at the Geneva Centre for Autism, and Azadeh, a Senior Scientist with the Autism Research Centre, a part of the Bloorview Research Institute at Holland Bloorview Kids Rehabilitation Hospital. Azadeh is also an Associate Professor in the Department of Biomedical Engineering at the University of Toronto. Her research explores how technology can support children with autism spectrum disorder. Let's find a little bit more about Shelley and Azadeh, and then we'll have a poll question to find out a little bit more about all of you. So Shelley, do you want to introduce yourself and maybe talk a little bit about the relationship the Science Centre has with the Geneva Centre and Sensory Friendly Saturdays?
Sure. Thanks, Rachel, for the introduction. Good morning, everybody. My name is Shelley Brazier. As Rachel said, I am currently the Director of Programs and Services at Geneva Centre for Autism. And I wanted to chat a little bit about Sensory-Friendly Saturdays. That's a partnership between Geneva Centre and the Ontario Science Centre. It started in 2018, so many years ago. And before COVID, we would be at the Science Centre. Geneva Centre staff would be at the Science Centre the first Saturday of every month, providing a variety of accessible activities, a sensory-friendly movie where the lights were up a little bit more, the sound was down a little bit more, and we also had a workshop geared towards caregivers, parents, those who are supporting a person on the spectrum. And then since COVID, we have really fantastically pivoted to providing this online, which is really great. So we haven't had to have a huge break due to what was happening in the world. And it's a really fabulous Sensoryfriendly Saturdays is a really fabulous event. I'm quite committed to it. Science Center has really committed themselves to becoming more accessible to all of their visitors that come through their doors, so that when you're at the Science Center, whether it be online, doing an activity online or in person, everyone feels welcome, is able to sort of enjoy what they have to offer from wherever they're at. So really proud of this venture, and hopefully we continue to do wonderful things in the years to come.
Awesome. Thank you, Shelley. Dr. Kushki, would you like to say a few words?
Sure, thank you. So my name is Azadeh Kushki, and as Rachel mentioned, I'm a senior scientist at Holland Bloorview Kids Rehab at the Autism Research Center. I'm also a settler immigrant, and I'm grateful, honored, and humbled to have the opportunity to work on the territory of the Huron-Wendat First Nations, the Seneca, Mississaugas of the Credit River, Mississaugas of Scugog Island, and the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. As part of my commitment to truth and reconciliation, I continuously reflect on learning opportunities, and as well as my commitment to respecting and valuing the various ways of knowing, learning, and being. As Rachel mentioned, I'm also an engineer, so I work on developing and studying technologies that can help support kids and their families, not only in therapeutic settings, but in their everyday environments. So I design technologies that can go with kids in their homes, in their schools, and in the community to provide various supports. Thank you.
Awesome. So glad to have you both with us today. So now we want to learn a little bit about our audience. So we're going to have a poll question that's going to come up. We'd love to know who's here with us today. Are you a parent, caregiver, an individual with autism, an educator, a student, or other? Maybe you're a researcher. Maybe you're a lifelong learner wanting to know more. We'll just give that a few seconds. You can answer multiple choice, so you don't just have to pick one of those options, because you may be any number of those things on that list. So thank you so much for participating in that poll. We see we mostly have parents and caregivers with us today, and we also have one other with us today as well. So thank you so much for sharing that. The next question we'd love to know is how you would rate your knowledge of autism. And so you can consider yourself very knowledgeable, somewhat knowledgeable, limited knowledge, or no knowledge. And this will help us judge sort of how much to go into depth with some background content. And we have lots of time for questions and answers. As well, as I mentioned previously, you can put those into us via the Q&A button, and you can ask some questions anonymously. It's a great opportunity for us all to learn, raise awareness, and promote acceptance. So thank you so much for completing that poll. We can see that quite a mixed variety of group. We see that some people are very knowledgeable, so that's wonderful. I really hope that you'll share some of that knowledge with others here today through the Q&A and the discussion that we have later. Others are somewhat knowledgeable, some have limited knowledge, and we don't have anyone here today with no knowledge. And I consider myself somewhat knowledgeable, but always really excited to learn more and participate in these events. So thank you all so much for answering those polls. Really looking forward to engaging with you all today, and really hope that the resources that are provided in these presentations are going to be helpful to best support all of you through different mental health and mental wellness supports, and different tools that are going to be discussed and highlighted to manage emotions and anxiety. So really excited to get into it. As I previously mentioned, any links shared in today's webinar will be sent in an email afterwards. So again, you can just relax and listen. I'm going to pass things over now to Azadeh, who will begin with a presentation about some of her research and some of the really interesting wearable technology tools that she is developing to support and empower emotion regulation.
Great, thank you so much, Rachel. Before we begin, a note about language. I want to acknowledge that there are different preferences in the community for referring to the identity of kids with autism, including person first language, so kids with autism, as well as identity first language, autistic kids. And in this presentation, I will be using those terms interchangeably. I also want to acknowledge that as a neurotypical individual, I obviously have a limited understanding of the lived experiences of autistic individuals. I am a lifelong learner and I listen to autistic voices to better understand those experiences and to respect those views. And I encourage everyone to do the same and listen to the autistic voices to learn more about the differences in specifically in emotion regulation and mental health that are experienced by autistic individuals. So as I mentioned before, I'm an engineer and I develop technologies for kids with autism and their families. And today's talk is focused on technologies that we've developed specifically for supporting mental health needs. Before we start, I have a few disclosures. I am the developer of some of the technologies that we'll speak about today, specifically Holly, and this technology is being commercialized, so I financially benefit from its sales. I've also been an advisor to a number of companies who are developing technologies for kids with autism, specifically Shaftesbury Films. I've been an advisor and may benefit from commercialization of their products. I've received funding from companies including Samsung Canada to study technology use in autistic kids, as well as a number of government organizations and funding agencies, including the Canadian Institute for Health Research, the National Science and Engineering Research Council, the New Frontiers for Research Fund, the Ontario Brain Institute, Kids Brain Health Network, as well as Autism Speaks. Okay. So why do we think that technology can help kids? Well, as an engineer, there are a few reasons that I see why I think that technology can be an effective medium for delivering supports to kids. One, technology is used very regularly. We recently did a study of 400 families, and kids on average are using technology 4 to 5 hours, especially during COVID, when we're relying so much on technology for connecting with others, for remote learning, and for leisure. So we're already using technology, which is great. Many kids find technology quite engaging and motivating. So this could be a really good way, a motivating way to be able to develop supports. In terms of the technology itself, we've really come a long, long way. We have mobile devices now that can go with us anywhere and anytime, and that really enables us to be able to have those supports for kids anywhere, anytime. So we can now start to take some of these supports and therapeutic concepts that are usually limited to treatment environments and integrate those into everyday life. Technology can also be a predictable way for developing support. So comparing technology use, for example, to interacting with people, we can think about various ways where technology can be more predictable. We can adjust the speed at which the information is being delivered. We can always rewind or fast forward to repeat the information or to skip the information. So there are many aspects of technology that allow us to have this predictability and control. And finally, technology allows for personalization. And this is key when we talk about kids and when we talk about neurodiversity. Every kid is unique, and every kid has unique needs. They have unique strengths and unique areas where supports can be provided. So technology is a great way to help provide that personalization. And we can do this in many ways. Technology can help to track progress and adapt the supports based on what is needed in real time. Technology can be personalized to, for example, to adjust the level of cognitive demands or language demands. Technology can be personalized for the sensory content that's provided. So lots of important personalization opportunities there. In autism specifically, technology is beginning to emerge as an accepted modality for delivering supports. And there are many ways that technology has been used. For example, technology is used in communication. Some of you may be familiar with AAC devices, augmentative and alternative communication devices. I don't want to age myself, but a few years back, these types of technologies used to be huge boxes that would cost tens of thousands of dollars to acquire. But nowadays we have apps like, for example, like Rehabilitation to Go that can just run on mobile devices. Technology is being used quite pervasively for education. We can think about everything from apps that are designed to deliver education to online learning that many of us have experienced during the pandemic in the last couple of years. There's a lot of research looking at technology-based interventions, and I will talk about some of those today. And the idea here being that we can use technology as a medium to deliver supports that augment therapeutic concepts. Technology has been used for skills training, so to support, for example, with daily activities, to support with learning job interviewing practices, support for learning driving skills, and so on. Technology is hugely used for entertainment in kids. And in fact, in the study that we did, this was the primary use of technology for many families. Many kids use technology, for example, to watch videos, to play video games, and generally for entertainment and leisure. With the advent of social networking, we're seeing technology being used quite often for advocacy, for raising awareness, as well as for creating support networks. And in some situations, technology can provide a safe space for individuals to interact with others. Of course, we have to be aware of the other side of the coin as well, and we can talk about some of the risks as well if anybody has questions about that. And then finally, technology can help facilitate participation. And again, we've seen this during the pandemic where we have now virtual participation in class environments that may or may not be more comfortable for some children. Okay, so with that very broad overview, I want to talk about two of the technologies that we've developed at the Autism Research Center. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have about other technologies as well. The first technology that I want to talk about is called Holly. And the goal of Holly is to help support emotion regulation for kids in everyday environments. Emotion regulation is the ability to control the intensity of duration of our emotions. We know that many kids have difficulties with emotion regulation, and this can lead to what some call interfering behaviors. For example, there may be irritability, aggression, anxiety, and other behaviors. And ultimately, difficulties with emotion regulation can impact mental health outcomes for kids. In many situations, specifically for kids with autism, it's difficult to identify signs of dysregulation before we see the behaviors. So what we wanted to explore was an alternative way that can help us see or provide an alternative way for kids to express their internal states before we see the irritability, before we see the behaviors that would be difficult to de-escalate. So what we did was to look at physiological signals. So instead of relying on the behavioral signs, we're looking at heart rate, which is basically how fast your heart is beating. And heart rate basically can tell us the state of dysregulation or a state of emotional arousal, often before we see the behaviors. So the way that we've designed Holly is that Holly runs on a smartwatch. So this is a smartwatch that some of you may be familiar with. You can buy this from any I guess, electronic store. So it's an algorithm that runs on a smartwatch. The smartwatch is able to measure the heart rate, and Holly will compute a baseline heart rate states for each person. And once we start to see deviations from this baseline state, Holly will provide alerts to a caregiver or to the kids to help de-escalate the arousal state before this leads to behaviors. So here's a picture of what Holly looks like. As I mentioned before, the user, or the child in this case, will wear a smartwatch that can measure the heart rate. And then the caregiver, a parent, a teacher, or the child will have this companion app that displays the level of arousal. So once we're in the green state, we're at rest, this is our baseline, things are calm. The yellow, as the bar goes up, this indicates an escalation of arousal levels, and basically signals that de-escalation strategies need to be applied. I have a video of Holly that shows how this works, so I'm just going to play that.
To use Holly, users begin each session by setting up a personalized baseline through a daily 10-minute initialization sequence. After initialization, the patented and clinically validated algorithm collects real-time measures of user heart rate and movement and translates this information into an emotion intensity that is displayed on the companion app. Users and caregivers can use this information to determine an appropriate emotion intensity to receive alerts for heightened emotion and begin calming exercises as determined by their healthcare providers.
Okay.
To use Holly.
Great. So at the Autism Center, we've done a number of studies to look at validating Holly and to see how this works in real environments. So we've looked at the technical accuracy of Holly. We've looked at the usability, which basically means, well, we have this thing that works, but will kids actually use it? And will kids actually enjoy using it? We've looked at the efficacy of it. So we've done what's called a randomized control trial to see when kids wear Holly, does that help to actually improve awareness of their internal states? And finally, we're partnering with various companies to test Holly in real life environments. We're also going to be launching a pilot shortly in school environments to see if Holly can help with emotion regulation in school environments. Okay, so the next technology that I want to talk about is virtual reality. Rachel, I believe we have a couple of polls to do before we go in there. So I will stop my share and let Rachel do her polls.
So the first poll question we have is, what technologies do you have in your home? So tablets, mobile phones, smartwatches, virtual or augmented reality, or other. And here again, it's multiple choice, so you can select multiple options. That's great. Just give it a few more seconds. Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for responding. So we see that everyone who responded does have mobile phones, and most also have tablets in their homes. A few do have smartwatches, which Azadeh was just talking about, and some have other types of technologies and devices. Nobody currently has virtual or augmented reality devices in their home. And I believe we have one additional question too about how you use technology. What do you use it for? For education, fun, connecting with others, maybe some of those things that Azadeh was talking about for advocacy or interventions, participation. And this is also multiple choice, so you can select more than one option. We're seeing most people are saying that they use their technology for almost all of these things. And that's great. Technology has so many purposes and uses in different ways. And it's great to see that technology is being used for education, fun. Everyone said connecting with others, and I feel like certainly in this time that is more prevalent than ever. And then lastly, also for other, perhaps some of those other uses of technology that Azadeh mentioned.
Okay, thank you everyone. So that actually helps with the next segment, which is virtual reality. So from the poll, we see that not many people have virtual reality technology in their home environments. So maybe I'll talk about what that looks like a little bit. So virtual reality basically is a technology that helps immerse the user in a virtual environment. So this is a computer generated environment that simulates a real life setting, or it could simulate a game setting, but basically it's immersive. So the user feels like they're in that environment. Often it provides a 360-degree view. So compared to a traditional video, for example, a virtual reality type of video would allow you to actually look around the environment and to explore the environment in a way that's more realistic and more naturalistic. The project specifically that I want to talk about uses virtual reality for anxiety. We know that anxiety is highly prevalent in autism, and it can impact up to 85% of kids. For many kids, some of this anxiety comes in new environments. So partaking in a new environment may be quite stressful for many kids. So we want to be able to leverage the ability of virtual reality to provide those realistic experiences so that kids can actually get an idea of what this new environment looks like virtually before they actually participate in the real life situation. So why virtual reality? Well, virtual reality could be inexpensive. There are different ways to experience virtual reality. One way is to have head-mounted head displays, which is what some people may have in mind when we talk about virtual reality. But actually, a lot of these virtual reality experiences can also run on tablets. And we saw from the poll that most people have those in their home environments. Virtual reality can provide very realistic experiences. We recently did a study with kids with ASD to explore just this. So basically we had a virtual reality experience. We had the traditional video version of that experience. And most kids indicated that they found the virtual reality experience more realistic and more enjoyable. Virtual reality can also provide a controlled environment. So if we're worried, for example, about a new situation and the noises in that environment, with virtual reality, you can adjust the noise level and gradually increase that to allow graduated exposure. And this is exactly what we are hoping to achieve with the technologies that we're developing. We've developed a couple of experiences for virtual reality for kids in partnership with Shaftesbury Films. One of them was a school bus experience where kids were able to explore a school bus. We know that that can be a very stressful experience. But what I want to talk about is virtual reality experience for dental visits. We know that dental visits can actually be quite stressful for many kids and many families. So we were hoping to be able to provide an opportunity for kids to explore a dentist's office together with the noises and the other sensory aspects of the environment that they may encounter. So I'm going to show you this video and then we can talk about the specific features of it.
Hi, my name is Dr. Molly and I am a dentist. This is my assistant. We are in a dentist room. When you come to the dentist, you might hear new sounds, see new things, and smell new smells. Some people...
So this may look like a typical video to you, but the virtual reality aspect of the video is that you can actually look around the room. So you can run this on your tablet and look around the room to explore all the different aspects of this dental office. So you can look at the people who may be there, you can look up, you can look down.
People find new things scary. We've made this video to help you feel more comfortable about coming to the dentist. We are wearing special clothes, gloves, face masks, face shield, and glasses. This is to protect us from germs. You get to wear a bib to keep your clothes clean. Can you find a blue chair in the room? This is where you will sit. It has a place to rest your head and lots of room to stretch. Can you practice stretching out your legs? After you sit in the chair, I may move the chair up and down so you are almost lying down. The chair moves slowly so you will be safe. After you sit down, I will check and clean your teeth. To do this, I have to look inside your mouth. You can help me by opening your mouth.
So the idea here is to have families run through this virtual reality experience with their kids before the kids come in. We also have a number of sensory aspects integrated into this video. For example, some of the noises that may be involved when a drill is being used. So here's an example.
This toothbrush spins to clean your teeth. This won't hurt.
So again, the idea is to be able to give a realistic experience to kids before they come in for their dental visit. As I mentioned, we're just researching this. So we've completed our study with the school bus, and kids found the experience more enjoyable and realistic. And actually many kids suggested that this may help them in terms of feeling a little bit less anxious about the school bus scenario. We're now running a randomized control trial in the dental clinic at Holland Bloorview to see if the virtual reality experience can in fact decrease anxiety associated with dental experiences. So in conclusion, we've talked about a couple of different tech-based approaches that can be an addition to our toolkit of supports. Again, it's really important to keep in mind that these are tools to supplement what's being provided by clinical experts, and they're not meant to replace clinical expertise. There are, benefits to using technology, and we're studying a lot of that, but there are also risks to using technology, and it's important to keep in mind guiding principles for how to safely use technology. And those principles could include, for example, limiting screen time exposure to ensure that screen time is not interfering with other aspects of life, specifically social connections, as well as physical activity and sleep. It's also really important to keep in mind safety tips for online safety, and we are starting to study some of this, but also we'd love to hear from families to really understand their experiences on that. Here's my contact information. If anybody has any questions, feel free to contact me. And I believe we have some time now as well to answer some questions. Thank you, everyone.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much, Azadeh, for sharing more about that work that you're doing. I know we have another presentation on some additional resources that are available. We did get a few questions that came in specifically regarding the Holly and the virtual reality experiences. So I thought maybe we could just address some of those now. We have one question here. What do you do if a child will not wear a smartwatch?
That's an excellent question. It's something that we definitely considered, and we've heard from families as well. There are many kids who don't want to wear smartwatches. So we're looking at different form factors. For example, we're looking at smart fabrics. So can you wear a shirt that automatically measures the heart rate? So this has the same feeling as the shirt. We're working with a company who is looking at designing these shirts in a sensory-friendly manner. So for example, minimizing the seams and tags and things like that can be more sensory friendly. So we're definitely looking at different form factors for this, and it's a really, really important issue.
Wow, that's so interesting. I wasn't aware that there were smart fabrics now. That's incredible. Someone else asked a question about the virtual reality controlled exposures, wanting to know, is it like a social story but more involved? Is it comparative to a social story?
It's exactly like a social story, but I guess a tech version of a social story. So in our randomized control trial, we're actually comparing the virtual reality version of this social story to a traditional paper-based social story to see if there are any benefits we're hypothesized the more immersive nature of the virtual reality together with the sensory pieces. So with the ability to explore the environment and to hear some of those sounds may be more helpful, but we have to wait until the study is done to be able to confirm that.
That's going to be really interesting to know about, and I would love to hear the results of that study when it's completed. The Ontario Science Centre has created a social story together with the Geneva Centre for Autism that's available for download on our website, but to perhaps create some video supplements to that downloadable social story as well might be a great experience for our visitors. So something to consider and definitely keep our eyes out for. Another question: how do we get the appropriate VR videos applicable for our kids?
So that's a great question. VR is one of those technologies that's being studied right now. So we are building the evidence to see if it actually works and to also understand some of the side effects that may be involved in using VR technology. So we don't have that evidence yet. I just want to make that clear that we are working on that. So hopefully by the next couple of years, we'll have a larger body of evidence to tell us how VR can be used in home environments.
Great, thank you. I hope that answers your question. Again, please continue adding your questions in the chat if you have more or if you have follow-up questions. And then we have another question about how can my child join one of the trials? Is it possible for them to join at their school?
Yeah, so we're in the process of running trials. Depending on which technology, there are different ways to join the trial. And so if you're interested, please send me an email. And I just want to reiterate that, family partnerships are hugely critical to the work that we do. So if anybody has any feedback or would like to contribute to development of these technologies or to trying them out and providing us with feedback, would love to hear from you. My contact information is available. So please feel free to drop me an email and we can chat.
Wonderful. And we'll make sure to include your contact information in the follow-up email that will come after this event. We'll be sending that out about 4 days after this event. So you might get that on Tuesday or Wednesday next week. And that'll include the information on how to get in touch with us today. So thank you so much. Keep those questions coming. We'll have some time for that at the end, but I want to make sure that we have time to hear about some more wonderful mental health and wellness resources that Shelley is going to be sharing with us.
Thanks, Rachel. And before I start, I just wanted to say your presentation was quite fascinating, Azadeh. It's really, when I think about at the Geneva Centre, the upside, I guess, of COVID is, a lot of our services over the past sort of 18 months became telehealth and virtual. We had to become really creative and innovative in how we provide supports to both the folks that have a diagnosis and also those that support them. And so it's really amazing to see the different uses of technology, whether it be VR, like you said, or using smartwatches and apps for different things, that you're able to sort of have a bigger reach to audience and also sort of sometimes change that way that people look at therapy. And I think you mentioned that in the early part of your presentation, because sometimes for some folks, and I've experienced this at Geneva Centre, they have a really negative thought of bringing my child to a room or they're sitting and doing something that just that image of what they might think that therapy or support looks like can be quite daunting or negative. So it's really great to see us use technology. Like you said, everyone uses technology. We saw from the polls, everyone has a tablet or a smartphone or something, and sort of be able to provide that support in ways that people are already familiar with and comfortable with. So really enjoyed your presentation. So thank you for that. And I wanted to sort of quickly touch on, do we have that slide, Rachel, with some of the supports, if we could bring that up.
We'll just bring that up and then we'll be able to share some of those links into the chat.
Yeah, so I won't take much time, but I wanted to sort of just touch quickly on the aspect of health and well-being, including mental health supports for those that are on the spectrum, but also for family members, siblings, other caregivers that are supporting the individual. Sometimes, when you get a diagnosis, again, when I talk to families, the focus is so much on getting whatever applicable therapy, appropriate therapy is for their child, youth, adult, regardless of age. And I want to sort of touch on some of these because I think it's really important, of course, to get the therapies that are needed if they've been recommended for your loved one, but also part of those supports is ensuring that our mental well-being is in check and that we're all doing well, not just for the individual, but for the whole family. I know that the focus can often be on, my child has autism, or a teen, or my adult loved one has autism. I want to get them support. Don't worry about me. And so I believe at the end of this presentation, in addition to Azadeh's presentation, there'll also be these mental health supports that you see up on the screen now, and many others. There's quite a lot across the wider GTA mental health supports. I sort of put these ones up on the slide today. Just I want to sort of note, in addition to the many, many others, that these ones offer a wide variety of supports for both children, youth, and adults, and also families. So I think that's an important piece to sort of keep in mind if you as a parent are having a rough time, a rough day, a rough week for whatever reason, no judgment to be had, that there are supports that you can kind of get fairly quickly that aren't also always ongoing. Sometimes I talk to families, I'm just having a rough week, a rough day. I don't need ongoing sessions with a therapist, but sometimes just in that moment, in that day, if you're unable to sort of reach out to a friend, a colleague, someone that you trust to vent or have support, there are other supports out there in the city. The What's Up Clinic is a great one. They're open. I think the lead agency is Strides Toronto, which you see above their website. They do have walk-in services on a daily basis from fairly early in the morning. I believe it's like 9, it might even be 9 to 8. Don't quote me on that. You can click on the link and there are times up there. It is free. Right now they're doing virtual, either by phone or video. And I believe coming up towards the end of the month, they're going to be opening up their clinic for some in-person sessions as well. So you can come, you can walk in, you don't need an appointment, you don't need to call ahead of time, and you can get a 1-hour session with a trained therapist to sort of talk through your day and kind of work with them and get some strategies and ideas for them to sort of continue on. You don't even have to come back. It's not a weekly thing where you'd say you have to come back every Tuesday. If it's just this one particular day, you can show up. There might be a wait depending on the number of people that are there. But now that it's actually virtual and by phone, the connection to a therapist is quite quick. So I wanted to point that out because sometimes, as I mentioned before, we all have rough days and it's important to sort of get that support, even if that support is just to have a listening ear to sort of vent and get that off your chest a little bit. That's the What's Up Clinic. The mental health TO, I mentioned this one as well, because when you click on that link, what will come up is two things. One, there'll be kind of a pop-up on the screen with really clear directions on how to get you connected, again, virtual, not in person, to a therapist. So very similar to the What's Up Clinic. But you can bypass that as well if that's not what you're looking for. But I mentioned this one because underneath they're connected with over 30 different partner agencies across the city. And so if you're looking just for really quickly, what's the phone number, a website of, if you remember the word Strides, but didn't remember their website or something like that, they have a long list there of both the contact information of over 30 different mental health supports across the city. So it's a good reference list to go to, even if you're not wanting to sort of get on the phone or a virtual video session with a therapist. The Family Navigation Project, it's housed at Sunnybrook Hospital, a really wonderful support project that supports youth and young adults, so kind of that 13 to 26, I think is their catchment. I mentioned this one as well because often, and that could just be my lens at the Geneva Centre when I talk to parents, though the Geneva Centre does support the lifespan, so children, youth, and adults, we often get a lot of requests for resources for children. So really under that age of, even under the age of sort of 15, 16. But we know that autism doesn't stop at the teen years and it still exists in adulthood. And those age groups need supports too. And so it's always nice to sort of point out some supports in the city that focus on that age group. And again, not just the particular individual, but the family as well. So the Family's Navigation Project does look at that. And also they have a lens of addiction to their supports as well. CAMH, many of you might have heard of CAMH. I put them up again, based off of my experiences chatting with families. Sometimes when they mention CAMH, you're like, oh, no, I don't want to go there. They have a very different view of what services might be available to them. CAMH has quite a wide variety of services, again, for families as a family unit, for those supporting an individual, for young children, teens, older youth. And so there again, another really good resources. They have, in addition to therapists, they also have behavior therapists. They have an autism unit or staff that are trained in, are knowledgeable about autism spectrum disorder. And so can really have a nice blend of therapy plus understanding and knowledge of what it means to have a diagnosis of ASD. Bloorview, which many of you may have heard of. Not only are they, Azadeh, it works at Bloorview, but they are a diagnostic hub for autism in Toronto. And then connected to them is a wide variety of support services, both for ASD and mental wellness. And then the Kids Help Phone, I like to sort of let parents know about that because I always think it's important to empower, again, where appropriate, where empower our kids to seek supports for themselves and advocate for themselves. So the Kids Help Phone, similar to some of the ones that I mentioned previous, is a place for kids to call in, speak to someone if they feel that they need support, or to talk through a challenging time that they might be going through around anxiety or stress or school or dealing with their diagnosis or friendships or whatever it might be. I also think it's important to empower parents, to empower their younger loved ones to be able to find supports for themselves. And not all children might be able to utilize this, but where it can, I think it's an important one for families and for kids to know about. So just a few resources that I want to share and just really want to stress that it can be challenging at times and rewarding also at times supporting a loved one with ASD, but to also know the focus isn't always on the particular individual, but also on everyone around that person. That's their support system, their family, their community, and that we all, it's natural and normal for all of us to need some support at some time or another. And there are quite a wide variety of supports across our city. So there's a few that's up on the screen now, and then in the supports, the list of support that comes out after, there'll be even a longer list. So I just want to share some of those.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Shelley. That was really wonderful to hear about all those different resources, not just for individuals with an autism diagnosis, but also for caregivers and others in the family as well, and spanning a wide range of ages as well, not just for kids, as you said. It doesn't stop at 13. And
exactly.
It's great to see that range of resources. Many of those are resources that Shelley mentioned are based in Toronto, and many have virtual or therapy options where you can connect with even if you aren't located in Toronto. And in the follow-up email, we'll have some additional resources that are available more widely across Ontario as well. Please continue to ask any questions that you have. We have a little bit more time. If you have any follow-up questions about any of these programs that Shelley could provide a bit more detail about them, if you're wondering about these different resources, supports, therapies that are available. If any of you have tried any of these resources and want to recommend them to others, please let us know if you've tried any of these particular programs and found them to be helpful. I think that, as you said, Shelley, for many, the idea of therapy is often this vision of talk therapy, kind of in a room. But I think there's so many new supports and resources, and that's why I think that this list you provided is really excellent, because it gives a great breadth, so people can can
Absolutely. Yeah. There's something kind of for everyone almost, you know, we don't have to be talk therapy. There's play groups, there's art-based groups, there's all different kinds and for all different ages. So
wonderful. I think there was another question that we had that came in. I just wanted to draw everyone's attention to it as they answered it in the Q&A. So if you didn't see that, there was a question about, is Holly available right now to be downloaded? So Azadeh's response was, we were in the trial stages for the kids version. If you're interested, please let me know, and provided her email address. And her email address was provided earlier in the chat, so you can reach out and ask any further questions. So I see we have another question for Shelley and Azadeh. Tips for talking about mental health with the rest of the family. Some of my extended family has a big stigma against it. It's a really great question. Thanks for asking.
that is a really great question. I get that a lot as well. And I find, especially in Toronto, we have a very multicultural city that we live in, and there is no one, you know, adhered to assumption around what it means to have autism, for example. Some cultures don't even have it, like that's an English word. They don't necessarily have a word that translates into their language, what that means and what autism is in their culture. And so sometimes when you're living in Toronto, regardless of whether you're born here, you came from somewhere else, not everyone shares that same view, which is kind of why I kind of mentioned, it applies to all of them, but CAMH, I get that a lot. We do refer to CAMH. We do have a wide variety of services, from play groups for kids that look like any other sort of, you know, social skill group or skill building group that you might see at Bloorview, at Geneva Centre, at, you know, Strides or Luminous or other agencies across the city. But because it's attached to CAMH, CAMH has a sort of negative, almost, try not to use the word negative, but almost, I want to say TV view of what a mental health services might look like. And people, you know, imagine very different things, which may or may not exist at CAMH, but they're that and so much more. And so mental health is just making sure, we've all had that. I think I try and tell parents we all have had a bad day. We don't have to, and you know, just like autism is a spectrum, I think mental wellness is a spectrum. We could go to our doctor for something very minor, and you know, our doctor says, okay, do this, just rest and drink fluids and you're feeling fine. But you also could have a different medical condition that requires quite a lot of follow-up and oversight over a medical person. And we don't tend to see the same stigma there, but mental wellness is just the same, right? And so I think getting that, encouraging those who are interested in wanting to access mental health supports, I always encourage that, because I think the more of us that do that, the more kind of, you know, typical and regular it might be seen just as going to the doctor because I have a sore throat or I have a rash on my arm, or, you know, it's time to go to the dentist every 6 months or 9 months or whenever people go. I think we do have a little catch up to do when it comes to mental wellness supports, but I try and tell folks it's just the same as anything else, right? Not everyone does every single day of their life perfectly. We all have bad days. Your car breaks down. This morning I made my coffee and spilt it, and I was like, oh my goodness. We all have those things that trigger sort of bad moments. So you want to vent or just sort of, you know, get support around that, whether it's something small like spilling your coffee or something larger, you know, as a parent, and that ongoing support of your loved one with ASD, which can be challenging at different times. So I think the more that we access it, I think the more that as a society that we continue to talk about and offer services. When you look at that list, when you get that follow-up email, there's so many supports. It's not like only one agency offers this, which kind of speaks to the need, both the need for it, but also that it's a regular thing. Just like if you want to get a dentist, if you Google dentists in Toronto, you would come up with a very long list, and no one would bat an eye at that. And so it's kind of nice to start to see that there's more and more and more of those supports out there for folks. So I don't know if that fully answers your question, but Azadeh, you might have more to add to that.
I think that, yeah, that was great. I think that the variety of different services is really helpful, and maybe sharing some of those resources with your family members that maybe are not really aware of the different, maybe their view of mental health supports is one way, or as you said, there's this great stigma around this, and not a lot of people talk about it. So I think maybe inviting a family member to like maybe go along with you, maybe to one of these play groups, or I think there's a lot of different things that individuals do that they don't realize they're doing for their own mental wellness and self-care.
Yes, exactly. Even just going for a walk and things like that, there's meditation apps that are so accessible now. A lot of people are enjoying them. And that's, another example of mental wellness. And I think to your point, Rachel, around, family members trying to share with other family members, if appropriate, inviting them along to something that you may be doing, and that puts the onus a bit on the person, which I think is important. But then, as someone who's a director of an agency, I also think that puts the onus on us as well, and how much of our services are offered just at, to use Geneva Centre example, just at our buildings versus, again, out in the community. And so I know we're thinking a lot about how, instead of having people come to us, how can we get to people? Because people have community centers, cultural centers, schools, religious buildings that they go to, and how can we be part of their culture to sort of bring our knowledge to them versus them always having to come to us, because sometimes that stigma will prevent them coming to us. So both ways.
We're getting a lot of questions coming in. I recognize we're getting close to the end of the program. Thank you for your questions. And if we're not able to get to all of them, we will take a look at those and send our responses in the follow-up email as well. So we have a question. Are the resources of information that were shared, are they shared with schools so parents know about these resources that are available to parents? I work with a school, yet I don't see any of these resources given to parents.
That's great. I mean, I can't speak for all schools. I do know, maybe Rachel, we can add it to the follow-up email. I can send you the link for TDSB in particular. Not everyone attends a TDSB, like a Toronto District School Board school. On their home website, they do have a list of resources around mental wellness for kids and for families. So Rachel, I will send you that link so we can perhaps add it to that. But I think now that about some of these things, if you have good relationships with your principal or your teacher, sharing some of these with them, because they may not know about it as well. I can't claim to know every single resource myself. The more we share with each other, they might be willing to put it up on their particular school newsletters, or share with their administrators as well to get them added to the list.
We have another question. Need help navigating puberty and doing inappropriate behaviors at school that are supposed to be done in private. Needs someone to help chat with her more than just mommy. She's almost 12. Azadeh or Shelley, do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, great question. I think puberty is a hard one to navigate. And I don't know your daughter and how well she's able to understand books, if you were to, read stories with her, or understand, pick up information from social stories, books, videos, different ways that information is provided. There are a wide variety of ways to sort of teach appropriate behaviors when it comes to puberty and things like that to both girls and boys as they navigate that stage. Hard to give one particular answer because I kind of have to know your particular situation, but there are a wide variety of supports at Geneva Centre. We do have some videos geared towards caregivers around navigating sexuality and puberty. So I can recommend looking at some of those resources. They are free workshops that parents can take. I'm not sure if Bloorview has some similar supports and resources as well, but also talking to your pediatrician, if you have a developmental pediatrician, which I believe Bloorview has some, to talk through your particular situation to get some strategies and supports to teach your daughter appropriate behaviors around this stage.
Thanks for those recommendations, Shelley, and thank you for that question. And some of those resources that you shared, Shelley, that were for maybe teens and youth might have some great connections for people that might be able to have those conversations. As you said, you needed someone to help chat with her more than just yourself, and so lots of resources there that hopefully you're able to find something to help support you with that. We do just have one more question, which is how can you explain mental health to a young child 5 years old? That's the last question. Thank you everyone so much for all your questions today. They're wonderful. Want to just end off with that one?
I think, I mean, Azadeh, you can jump in as well, because I'm not sure how young your child's with Holly and how you explain to kids around what's happening. I think, it's using child appropriate language. There are actually quite a lot of really great young books geared for young kids. They're picture books, really simple language, really great pictures that sort of describe what kids might be going through. I think it's encouraging kids to sort of talk about how they can, if they're able to express themselves vocally, talk about how they're feeling, talk about, that sort of classic, if your kid is in school 5, they might be in kindergarten. How was your day? And how's your day is kind of open. And sometimes children are like, oh, it was fine. And they never have anything to say. But I've learned over the years, I have 3 kids myself, so rather than ask, how was your day? Just sort of, ask, did anything funny happen today? Who did you sit by? Did the teacher say anything interesting? Try to get some pointed questions just to encourage them. I say this to encourage kids to talk about themselves and how they're feeling and, how they attach certain feelings to certain situations. A 5-year-old, you may not sit them down and be going, okay, today we're going to go to the doctor at Bloorview to do self-regulation, They may not understand that, I think, at 5, but just trying to talk about, we're going to talk about our emotions, because I think all emotions are equal in value. So sometimes we can hear when we talk about emotions that some emotions are perhaps more negative and some emotions are perhaps more positive, but they're all valid, I think. So the more we talk about emotions, that all emotions are okay, as long as we express them in appropriate ways, in language that is appropriate for a 5-year-old, 10-year-old, 15-year-old, someone with an ASD diagnosis. I think it's just important to start talking about it early, to get kids used to that. This is just a regular thing that we talk about. I don't know if that's fully answered your question. I think I went off on a bit of a tangent there, but I think there are a lot of resources geared to young kids. Just books alone, if you go to your local library, or if you have the resources to go to a bookstore to purchase, there are quite a few young picture books that talk about emotions and mental well-being, and the importance of that to being happy and healthy as you grow.
Thanks for that. And thank you for all your questions today. I hope you all enjoyed our Sensory Friendly Saturday event on mental health supports. Thank you so much to Shelley and Azadeh for joining us, and for everyone in our audience. If you'd like to learn more about the Ontario Science Centre's upcoming events, you can subscribe to our newsletter. Our website also has a variety of different resources. As I mentioned, we have a social story available to download, as well as many virtual science at home activities. As Shelley mentioned, our Sensory Friendly Saturday programs are offered the first Saturday of every month. Our next workshop will be on Saturday, November 6th. And you can check out past recordings on our website at ontariosciencecentre.ca. We have a whole page where we have the recordings for past Sensory Friendly Saturdays programs, which have been running since last June. We also have them on our YouTube channel as well. So we'll be dropping some of those links to our website and how you can subscribe to our e-newsletter in the chat, and we'll send those in the follow-up email as well. Any final remarks, Shelley and Azadeh? No, we're all good. Just want to thank everyone. We're seeing lots of thank yous from the audience in the chat as well. So thank you so much, everyone. Take care and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.